All right. We are going to talk about the LessWrong posts now. The name of this post is Explaining versus Explaining Away. I don't know. How did you feel about these? Because I kind of enjoyed the dunking on...
One of my favorite
now
books...
I feel bad for saying that.
No, one of my favorite books ever is dunking on this Keats outlook.
On Weaving the Rainbow by Dawkins, right?
That's right. I wonder if... it sounds like the kind of thing Yudkowsky would have read, but the idea broadly, and then we'll dive into the post in specific, is that science makes things less fun by explaining them. Or if you read Keats literally, sometimes removes things entirely, which does remove some things entirely, but not actual things. That's the important distinction that I think Keats missed.
I love this. It opens up with a poem by Keats, an excerpt from a poem at any rate, I think. I'm not sure if this is a whole poem. It's Lamia from 1819, and Eliezer says it deserves some kind of award for most famously annoying poetry, which I think is fair. I'm bad at reading poetry, so I kind of don't want to. Do you want to read this, or should we just tell the listeners to read it themselves?
I'll give it a shot. I don't have a lot of practice. Do not all charms fly at the mere touch of cold philosophy? There was an awful rainbow once in heaven. We know her woof, her texture, she is given in the dull catalogue of common things. Philosophy will clip an angel's wings, conquer all mysteries by rule and line, empty the haunted air and gnomed mine, unweave a rainbow.
Nice. It's poetic, but it's also... let's get into what Eliezer says about it, as to why this is so annoying.
I've never understood poetry in the first place. Just come out and make your point, but...
Write a blog post, damn it. This poem could have been a blog post.
I agree. I mean, at some point, I will hopefully understand poetry, but in all seriousness, I have a hard time grasping anything from poetry that isn't better conveyed by plain words.
My understanding is that the actual sound of the words is very important. I don't...
Important for what?
I don't know. I also have severe issues with poetry.
I mean, maybe conveying the feeling they're going for or something. And what Keats is trying to go for here is, isn't this a bummer? Man, the universe used to be so cool, the world was so magical, and now, since philosophy and science, ripped it apart, now it's all boring, and there's no haunts in the air, no mind, or no gnomes in the mind, and apparently no rainbows.
But Eliezer points out, the rainbow is still there.
It's an important distinction.
The rainbow was explained, the haunts and the gnomes were explained away.
That phrasing is so apropos.
He asks what could be going on in the anti-reductionist's mind, such that they would put rainbows in the same category as haunts and gnomes. And the rest of this seems to be a dive into that.
At a quick run, basically, it shares in common with haunts and gnomes the fact that science has taken an analytical look at it and explained the phenomena behind it.
Well, I mean, sort of. There were no phenomena behind the haunts and gnomes.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what the gnomes are perceived to have been doing, but there's the famous example with the ghost case, which they took for one of those movies that, there were 10 that came out in those 5 years. It was taken from a very popular skeptic case, and I'm forgetting the guy's name, but I met him at a conference. But it was I can hear the stairs being walked on. It's a ghost. And he found that the stairs share structure with it was like a townhome or an apartment or whatever. Mm-hmm. And when somebody on the other side of the wall walked on the stairs, it echoed on the stairs in this person's house. That explains away the ghost, but it doesn't explain away the sound, right?
Right. Yeah.
So in that sense, it's explained away what you've misattributed to be the cause. And so in that sense, the gnomes and the haunts are gone. But it's not clear to me, and Yudkowsky takes a stab at it, at what the hell Keats was complaining about here. Rainbows are still there. They're still pretty. I guess what he's complaining about is that they're no longer magical.
Okay, so Eliezer's answer basically reduces to what's happening is the mind projection fallacy, which we talked about 1 or 2 episodes ago. It was a recent LessWrong post. The idea behind the mind projection fallacy being that your feeling of how the world is projected onto the world, so that you assume that how beliefs intuitively feel is how the world actually is. He made this point by saying that a 747 is just a collection of interacting elementary particle fields. But that just is doing a lot of work right there. It's still an object. Those fields interact in a certain way that makes the plane be there and have wings and interact in the air. I think that the real point of this, and because he comes back later to harp on mere in later posts, which is just another word of saying just, it's a just in fancy clothing. He says, when physicists say there are no fundamental rainbows, the anti-reductionists here, there are no rainbows. The rainbow is explained by a number of physical phenomena, but that doesn't mean the rainbow goes away. And when you think that your map of reality is reality, then once you hear the rainbow is explained by things that aren't rainbows, that means that there are no rainbows anymore.
Do you think Keats's head would have just exploded if he read through The Human Use of Language or A Human's Guide to Words or whatever?
No, I think either he would have gotten it or he would have gotten it but dismissed it as unromantic and therefore not a thing he wants to accept.
I guess because I think you're probably right. His head wouldn't have exploded off his shoulders, but like there are no fundamental tigers either, right? There are these things that fit in the category of tigers, but there's no platonic ideal of a tiger. There are edge cases, are panthers tigers, like to the point of the view of our ancestors, they're close enough that we should react the exact same, right? But so, I mean, that's not even getting really into reductionism. It's part of the lead up to it. There aren't fundamental things, right, outside of whatever quantum, etceteras, right?
Yeah.
So I think Keats would have hated modern science, or maybe updated and written better poetry. But
I honestly, I really hope that if he would have read these sequence of like 8 posts that we're in the middle of right now, he would have found the beauty in reality. But I don't know. We'll never know.
Alas.
To wrap up with this one, science didn't empty the air of haunts and empty the minds of gnomes. It emptied the model of air of belief in haunts. And it emptied the map of the mind of representations of gnomes. They never touched an angel's wings and destroyed them because there were none there. He says, scientists didn't do anything to gnomes, only to gnomes, in quotes. The quotation is not the referent.
Hey, callback.
Yeah.
And as he puts so well, and this should, could be a mug or a bumper sticker, that which can be destroyed by the truth should be.
Yes.
The scientist didn't take away gnomes, it took away the delusion.
Yeah.
And I like this. Again, I want to say the guy's name is Nick. It's going to bug me that I can't think of that skeptic who did that special case of the ghost. He didn't explain away the noise, he explained away the delusion that it was a ghost. Well, not the delusion, the misunderstanding. I don't think that person was as deluded as Keats. But the thing with the rainbow thing, and with Keats's take on it, is like you can still go outside and point at rainbows.
Yeah,
I don't get, you can never point at haunts or gnomes because those weren't actually there in the first place, but rainbows were. All they lost to him was the magic. And if you enjoyed this kind of, what did you call it? Dunk. Yeah, if you enjoyed this dunking on Keats, then you also enjoy the majesty of science, but haven't read Unweaving the Rainbow by Richard Dawkins, I can't recommend it highly enough. If you liked his curmudgeonly, the God delusion, this is the opposite of that. This is him enthusiastically preaching, and celebrating something rather than expressing his irritation with something that's been bugging him for 50 years, right?
Right.
It's him sharing his passion with something that he's been enjoying for 50 years.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to fake reductionism, which I love this post.
Me too.
It starts out with, again, a dunk. Eliezer quotes the "We know her woof and her heft of we've unweaved the rainbow" line. And he says, I'm guessing, though it's only a guess, that Keats himself did not know the woof and texture of the rainbow.
I have to think he's right.
Yeah.
There is something fun and mysterious and childlike sense of awe that is fun to recapture as an adult if you can, but to look at a rainbow and have no idea what's going on other than like, oh my gosh, isn't that beautiful, right? You do kind of lose you do entirely lose if you understand how rainbows work, the mystery part of it. But the actual explanation is so much more satisfying, I think, than just worshiping the mystery.
Right. There's a definite feeling of mystery that's kind of beautiful and fun and makes the world magical, but it's a very simple emotion, I think. It's very surface. And when you get to the more complex, intricate emotion of understanding the wonder of the physics behind it, that it's different, certainly, but I think it's a deeper understanding. It's like the difference between Pig and Socrates, right? Yeah,
there's something deeply satisfying about really understanding something at a fundamental level. I don't know. It's a different kind of pleasure. But I think it's one that is of higher order and actually just a higher peak.
I'm reminded of when I was speaking with my first wife, who was a committed theist. We were looking on just a magical sunset, and she commented to me, "And you think all of this made itself?" Which was so, like, I didn't even know how to respond to that because there was such an inferential distance that she is feeling like wonder and awe and magic, but so am I, and my wonder and awe is much more fractally complicated than hers because of the understanding of how all this, not deep understanding, I don't know everything about it, but certainly greater depth than hers of how all this did come to be and the insane things that had to happen over eons to get here. It just felt different than a very powerful dude did it with a paintbrush.
Yeah, I never liked that. I mean, it goes without saying I never liked that explanation, but I also don't see how it's really satisfying. I guess, being charitable, you could say, well, no, it's a beautiful mind that created this beautiful universe that we enjoy, sure. But, I don't know, dig a little deeper. Like, is God a Broncos fan because the sky is blue and sunsets are orange? Like,
God, I hate that bumper sticker.
I didn't know that was a bumper sticker. That was a joke from my high school chemistry teacher that I remembered.
Okay. I've seen it on a bumper sticker a few times.
It makes you wonder, like, why wouldn't rainbows be a different color? Or why wouldn't sunsets be a different color? Well, a scientist could explain to you why they're the colors they are, right? But a theist with no interest in finding out the actual truth would have no better explanation than God likes the Broncos.
Yeah. The Broncos is a local sports team, and their colors are blue and orange for anyone who's not in Denver.
Yeah, it's a football team. Anyway.
Yeah, so coming back to Keats, he said that Newton destroyed the poetry of the rainbow by reducing it to a prism. And Eliezer says, I am guessing, though it is only a guess, that Keats could not have sketched out on a paper why rainbows only appear when the sun is behind your head, or why the rainbow is an arc of a circle. If so, Keats had a fake explanation. In this case, a fake reduction. He'd been told that the rainbow had been reduced, but it had not actually been reduced in his model of the world. Is it okay if I just read the next 2 points, because I think they're all in one thing?
Yeah.
Okay. The next point is there is a great distinction between being able to see where the rainbow comes from and playing around with the prisms to confirm it, and maybe making a rainbow yourself by spraying water droplets, versus some dour-faced philosopher just telling you, no, there's nothing special about the rainbow. Didn't you hear? Scientists have explained it away. Just something to do with raindrops or whatever. Nothing to be excited about. You have to interpret the anti-reductionist experience of reductionism not in terms of their actually seeing how rainbows work, not in terms of having the critical aha, but in terms of their being told that the password is science. The effect is just to move rainbows to a different literary genre, a literary genre they have been taught to regard as boring. And a number of these things link back to LessWrong posts, such as science as a tire for literary genre and the teacher's password for the word password.
And the last one, boring science as a curiosity stopper, which I really liked.
Yeah.
Because, to some people, that is like it's got an explanation. Well, that's boring.
The thing is, the explanation is fascinating and wonderful. It's just that they've been told, yeah, it's just science. And they're like, oh, science is boring. No need to look further. There's no magic.
Exactly. I feel like I've said this before, but, I have now a better idea than I did the last time I've said this years ago, how light bulbs work, right? There's still a bit of a mystery. What's a super mystery is like how I can text you a picture. I get in broad abstract how that works, but the idea that I can send you a high resolution image, without connecting wires or anything, I remember camera phones were just coming out when my great grandparents were still alive, and their big innovation was finally getting a cordless phone that they could answer from their patio, a cordless house phone. And he was just like, I'll never understand how this works. And but he didn't go ahead and fill in the blank by saying it's magic or therefore it's boring. It's just like it was so far beyond. They were farmers. Born right around the turn of the 1900s. So that level of experience is beyond him. So I guess what I'm getting at is like there is something fun about like not knowing how something works, but when you actually get to know how it actually works, I've never found that to be less satisfying than the mystery. Yeah. If anyone has an example of like, I thought this was really, fun and mysterious, then I learned how it worked and it turned out to be boring. Ooh, I have one good example of that. Magic tricks.
I was about to say, that is the classic example of the it going the other way.
Yeah, and that's the only one I can think of. And I remembered I was like 11. We were passing through Vegas. I'll be quick, I promise. on a road trip.
I have a similar experience, but go on.
Well, so there was somebody showing off a magic trick in the magic toy shop.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I need this. And it was this
Yeah.
cool, like, he'd fling a card around, it would levitate and it would come right back to him.
Oh my God, I saw the exact same one.
And then
And then it's just a string.
It's an invisible string. And
it's just a string.
so did you buy the same thing? And then they take you in back and show you, and then you're like, well, fuck. And then you've got this, this string, and it's kind of cool, but it's way less fun knowing it.
And the presentation, like, maybe your guy was different, but my guy in particular, like, it was all cool and showmanship and everything on the outside. Then he takes you to the back room, all the affect dropped. And he wasn't like, check out this cool string we have and how we can attach it. And you got to, like, do it just right. Instead, he was like, look, string, plop, boo, see?
I think we met the same
Rubes.
guy.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
He drained absolutely all the joy out of it.
Yeah, he didn't even explain how it worked in a fun way.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But it was like, he's like, I don't know, maybe we did actually both in the same salesman, or maybe every magic shop salesperson is the same way. But yeah, he didn't even present the trick with any fun behind it. So yes, short of actual tricks, I can't think of a real life phenomena that is less fun by understanding it than enjoying the mystery of it.
Yeah. All right, so the literary critics have their gnomes yanked out by force, not dissolved in insight, but removed by flat order of authority. They are given no beauty to replace the hauntless air, no genuine understanding that could be interesting in its own right. And that does suck.
If only the literary critics had gone on to actually read the explanations.
I mean, this is why we're trying to spread rationality to all the folks, right? So they can actually read these parts of Eliezer and maybe, or read Unweaving the Rainbow. Like, it's good to get the word of beauty and joy out into the wider world. Like, you can have a meaningful life that is wonderful while still being less wrong about what reality is.
Well, and just like mysteries of the natural world are really fun once explained.
Mm-hmm.
I have looked this up before, but I haven't had ChatGPT coach me through actually understanding it, so it never stuck. I still don't quite get how wind works. I know it's pressure differentials or whatever, but I don't know why it seems like it's constantly windy over here and why we get gusts of 35 miles an hour in the middle of the night. And it's like, if it's pressure differentials somewhere down the road, why isn't that being resolved with the first few gusts? Why does it go on for hours? I will know, in 30 minutes when I get done looking this up. But I bet that the answer is more fun than me just being, actually kind of annoyed at the mystery. But if I found the mystery, tantalizing and intriguing, I bet the actual explanation would be more exciting. I liked it. This seems like it's a dunk, but it could be taken earnestly. He's like, well, can't blame Keats. Poor lad probably wasn't raised right. But he dared to drink confusion to the memory of Newton.
Apparently they had a toast at one point, him and some friends, a toast to the confusion of the memory of Newton.
Right.
Or confusion to the memory of Newton.
That's right. And I liked the way this wraps up. I propose to the memory of Keats's confusion as a toast for rationalists. Cheers.
I think that's a good one.
I like it too.
It might be good to actually incorporate that in something, because it reminds us of the tragedy of what can happen when you don't dig deeper, when you just accept the teacher's password.
Man, if we ever get whatever the full super advanced simulation stuff where there's all the moral emergency of creating fully sapient people and stuff, wouldn't it be fun to have Keats over for dinner and Newton and have them, talk it out and show how rainbow. How about Newton, Dawkins, and Keats, plus or minus Yudkowsky, just for like explaining explaining the rainbow to Keats, right? To see if he likes the answer or not.
Yeah, but that feels too much like a lecture. If there's like Dawkins and Newton, then Keats needs one of the romantics on his side as well, so it could be a 2-on-2 discussion.
Yeah, that's fair. I just figured I chose Dawkins. I chose Newton because he's the one that Keats is complaining about, but Newton was notoriously an asshole, and I think would kind of be an arrogant prick and talk down to Keats, whereas Dawkins, I think, would be ecstatic at the opportunity to explain to him.
Yeah, we would need someone bit less of an asshole.
Yeah. Well, the closest we can get to that, again, is Unweaving the Rainbow. So,
excellent. All right, well, we are going to continue this in the next two LessWrong posts, which are among some of my favorites, and I have some things to say about these and post-rationalism when we get to them in our next episode.
Oh, boy.
The next two posts are Savanna Poets and Joy in the Merely Real.
That one I remember. And I actually thought that the fake reductionism one was going to say that, but it didn't. So,
but it set it up.
It sure did.